Hello, Dr. James Bogash, expert in health and longevity. And today we're going to talk a little bit about gluten sensitivity, gluten allergy. Because if you backed up another 20 years ago, like this certainly existed, but it's it's not like it wasn't every other person, which it seems like everybody these days has a gluten sensitivity. So or gluten allergies. And let me clarify that first. Gluten sensitivity and allergy is a spectrum. At one end, we have people that are sensitive. The other end, we have people that are flat out allergic. They get what's called flattening of the villi. You can check it on biopsy. They will osteoporosis, like all kinds of bad things can happen at that end of the spectrum. That level has always been around. It's not anything new. I think the frequency of it has unquestionably changed. Certainly, it's cooler now. Before it wasn't the in thing, and it was hard to find gluten-free products. Of course, things like broccoli and vegetables have always been gluten-free. So, I've talked about this before. The whole gluten-free diet isn't about eating the same stuff just as a processed gluten-free. It's about a lifestyle that avoids any gluten-containing grains or anything like that. So, but why might we be seeing more of it? Now, certainly there is some concerns with gluten as a nitrogen storage protein in grains. And so the use of nitrogenous fertilizers, gluten levels have probably gone up in grains. But this particular study, looking at about 100 or so kids, it looked for something called zonulin. Now, zonulin is a protein that actually increases permeability of the gut, so that when zonulin levels go up, our immune system's more likely to have to react to something that gets through, like gluten in certain grains. And so what this study points to, I strongly do not believe that gluten sensitivity, gluten allergies, and celiac disease is random. I think that there are things that happen as an infant or toddler that predispose us to all kinds of bad crap, and this is no different. And so researchers looked at zonulin levels in children, and they found that even a year and a half before these kids were diagnosed with a celiac disease autoimmunity, so like the full end of the spectrum, a year and a half before that, zonulin levels were starting to creep up. And so zonulin's been linked to things like type 1 diabetes. So again, it makes sense. But where the real critical part of this study is, they found that increasing antibiotic use increased the steepness of the curve. I'm going to say this again. Antibiotics, unless they're saving your life, do way more harm than good in just destroying a normal gut flora. And the younger we do that, the worse the outcomes are going to be. This is just yet another study talking about how damaging antibiotics are, or really how important a normal flora is. Even 2 years later, most people's microbiome has not recovered from a course of antibiotics. And these days, in today's society, people don't even go 6 months, let alone 2, 5, 10 years without a course of antibiotics or steroids or even anti-inflammatories. But so looking at things like SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which increases zonulin levels. In this particular study, exposure to antibiotics in these kids increased the zonulin levels quicker. So SIBO is again linked to antibiotic use, to acid-blocking drugs. So Nexium, Prilosec, and Omeprazole. We are just screwing with the gut in a critical stage of development, and the vast majority of medicine is oblivious to it. So it's up to you to be an advocate, and just antibiotics, like, again, if you've got a kidney infection or life-threatening infection, that's fine. If you're just taking it because you don't like maybe somebody's got a viral respiratory infection, they don't want it. We overuse them. And there are ramifications on the immune system without a doubt. Like, this is very clear. Long-term, lifetime ramifications from antibiotic use, especially as a infant and toddler. And this study just drives that home again. As always, I'll post a link to this particular study in the description. Make sure you like this video, share it with somebody who you think needs information, and subscribe to the channel.